Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining PHCA for today's webinar, How to Use the Quidel Sofia 2 Training. I hope everyone is doing well and staying healthy during this ongoing challenge with COVID-19. We recognize the extraordinary work that you've been doing throughout this crisis, and thank you for all that you're doing. I'm Wendy Johnson with the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. PHCA offers monthly webinars to members to receive updates from department staff on regulations, learn from industry experts on current trends and practices, and to gain a better understanding of practical application tools to equip you so that you may continue to provide the highest level of quality care possible. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the PHCA website. The webinar has been approved for one continuing education credit for PHCA members and potential members. Please note that effective Monday, November 2nd, potential members can continue to view the PHCA webinars but will no longer receive credits. If you are interested in membership information, please be in touch with us. Credits will be uploaded to NAB within the next 2 weeks for those who have provided us with your unique NAB number. A survey will be launched at the close of the webinar. Your feedback is important to us and our speakers, so please take a moment to complete the survey. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. However, throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit questions using your questions pane on the right hand of your screen, and our presenters will address them at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar will be presented by Cheryl Miller, Vice President, New Market Development, and Allison, Leone, New Market Development Director, both with Quidel. Point-of-care testing is rapidly evolving. For example, COVID-19 testing is being performed in non-traditional locations such as congregate care settings, schools, among others. In this webinar, Quidel will review Sofia 2 as it relates to SARS testing. This presentation will be a comprehensive review of the Sofia 2 system, quality control processes, and SARS testing procedure, maintenance, and data management. I'll now turn the webinar over to Cheryl.
Thank you, Wendy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to learn more about the Quidel Sofia 2 analyzer. We're happy to share with you some new training initiatives, and today we're really going to focus on basics around Sofia 2, how to run a SARS test, how to process tests in what we call batch mode, maintenance on the system, how to look at connectivity options, how do you download results, and last but not least, how do you also take that information for state reporting. Now, again, today it's just a general overview. We do have more thorough training modules on the Quidel website. If you've just recently received your Sofia 2, make sure to go on to the Quidel website and check out those training modules, which are very, very handy in helping you learn how to use this device. So our goal today is to basically go through a general training, help you feel more confident and more comfortable in using your Sofia 2. So thank you again. Again, my name is Cheryl Miller, and Allison will be joining me in this presentation. So to start it off, we thought we would give you just a brief history of the COVID-19 story from Quidel's perspective. As we all know, on February 26th, the CDC confirmed the first U.S. case, and then just a few weeks later, on March 4th, our CEO and CFO were invited to the White House to meet with the task force to discuss testing options and what our company, along with numbers of other diagnostic companies, could do to address this pandemic. Literally a couple weeks later, we launched our first EUA for our Lyra molecular test that tested for the SARS-CoV-2 system. We then had an additional EUA, which removes an extraction step from that Lyra system. And then on May 8th, we launched the first Antigen SARS test on Sofia 2. We started our production at about 1 million tests per month, and now we're far exceeding that production. We continue to add on new lines and are really meeting the demands and trying to meet the ever strong demand for product that's out into the marketplace today. And now we move forward to just a few weeks ago, October 2nd, we did have our next EUA, which is what we call our combo test. Our combo test, again, can run on the Sofia 2, and it's one test cassette that will run both influenza A, B, and then give you a SARS answer as well. And last but not least, in development, we are working on an antibody test. We're very excited about this antibody test. It'll have a couple different measurements that are unique to what we're going to be offering to the market, making it more specific and more useful by having various targets on that test. So more to happen soon as we move through our development process there. But today, we're going to focus on the first test, this antigen test. The antigen test is really looking at the nucleocapsid proteins that are present when you're having symptoms or you have virus in your body. The antibody test, which is the product that we spoke about a minute ago that's in development, is looking at your body's response to a specific virus. And then there's also a molecular test, which I know we're all familiar with, that's looking at if you actually have the disease, like an antigen, but instead of looking for the virus in that nucleocapsid protein, it's actually looking at genetic material that's left in your body. All right, so they're looking at different things, but both of us are telling us if we have the virus or not on the antigen and the molecular test. So when we look at the system, there's two different assays that we have available on the SARS platform. We have the original SARS antigen FIA test, which only runs SARS, and then we have the Sofia flu plus SARS antigen test that runs both flu, A, B, and SARS. And we thought we would touch on both of these since the second one is newer and just kind of bring you up to speed on that test as well, as long as we have you on this webinar today. Both of those assays are run on the Sofia 2, which you see in the image to your left. The Sofia 2 is a very, very simple point-of-care analyzer. It's CLIA-waived and allows you through a touch screen to interact with the system, and that touch screen also has a GUI interface that walks you through the steps in running a test. So it makes it very easy. Specifically, if you're not really used to running lab tests, it's a very easy system to learn and get comfortable with using. It operates in a couple of different modes, which we're going to get into in a little bit, meaning you can run it one test at a time, or you can run in batch mode, which will allow you to get higher throughput, up to 40 to 50 samples an hour. So if you're in a facility that is doing some, like a nursing home, who may be doing routine testing, using that batch mode will be really important for you. And last but not least, the system does have a number of connectivity and surveillance options that we'll speak to later in the presentation. So before we begin, of course, we're going to be talking about looking at that antigen, that nucleocapsid protein that's found in the nasal passage. And we know that that product, when we look for that virus, we see that on our SARS test that we're able to, on symptomatic patients, have a PPA of 96.7% and an NPA of 100%. PPA is similar to a sensitivity and NPA is similar to a specificity. So we have really good performance when someone is showing that they have virus in their system. Now we look at the combo test. This is going to give us the results on the influenza A, influenza B, and the SARS-CoV-2 assay. Now we're going to look at the nasal. When you look at the chart to the left, we're going to look at a nasal swab versus a nasopharyngeal, because most of you will be using that simple nasal swab that just goes about an inch into the nostril and is an easy to capture sample. Our performance on influenza A is between 90% sensitivity and 95 specificity. B is always a little bit lower on everybody's test. It's 89 versus 96. And then again, our SARS is in that mid to high 90s at 95.2 and 100% specificity. So either way you go, if you are looking at the SARS only or the combo test, you're going to have a really, really good test to run. Now, a lot of people moving into respiratory season, we're recommending that they move forward with the combo test because people are going to present with symptoms, right? And we're not going to know what that is clinically until we do a test. Is it influenza or is it SARS? Now with the combo test, especially moving into this time of year, we're going to be able to know what is happening with that patient and hopefully make better recommendations based on more information. And from a SARS perspective, the outcome can also be different. There's different reporting requirements from influenza versus a SARS result. So again, it's important to know what disease that person may have, which virus that they have. So now that we have some background on the tests themselves, let's talk about and walk through how to run a test. So in each kit that you receive from Quidel, each kit has everything you need to run a test, including the swab. We get that question a lot. So you'll have the swab, you'll have the cassette, you'll have controls in each of those kits. You'll also have little pipettes and reagents. Everything you need is included, okay? Those kits should all be kept together, keep all the components in your kit, and they do not need any refrigeration. They can just sit on your counter at room temperature or in your cabinet, wherever you want to keep your things, okay? Most of these kits will come with a 12-month expiration from the date of manufacture, if not a little longer. So right now we're looking at 12 months just because these are brand new assays to market. When you also receive your Sofia 2, you'll get what we call an installation pack. And in that installation pack, you're going to have a foil cassette. This foil cassette includes a calibration cassette. So you want to make sure that you keep that calibration cassette in a safe place because you're going to use that calibration cassette about once a month. And we're going to speak to that in a minute about how to calibrate, but it's important that you keep it again in that foil pouch in a safe place. And for those of you who are part of our nursing home HHS initiative, we will be sending to you in a few weeks some dry transport tubes and directions on batch processing. And for the rest of you that would like to get information on that, we'll have our emails at the end of this presentation, and Wendy can help facilitate giving you our contact information so we can share with you as well more information about dry tubes and batch processing. But later on today, Allison will be running through those steps more clearly for you. So the first thing you do when you run a SARS test or when you set up your Sofia is you've got some packets, right? The Sofia is very, very simple. On the front, you just have a touch screen, you have the cassette drawer that you're going to place the cassette in, and then you'll see on the left an integrated barcode scanner. Now that can be really, really handy. Let's say your employees have barcodes for their IDs. You could scan their barcode in as what we call a patient ID. Or maybe you want to set up barcodes for your employees that you're testing. You could do it that way. Or, you know, the operators that are using the system. So the barcode scanner is a really nice feature to have integrated into the system. On the back of the system, you've got basically the power port where you plug it in. The switch where you turn it on is on top. And then you're going to have the section where you can put in the USB and then your RJ45 port if you want to integrate that into your local area network. So there's not much to plugging it in and getting it going. So when you first plug it in and turn it on, the Sofia is going to ask you for your zip code. And the zip code is not your personal zip code, it's the zip code of where that instrument is located. So it's the facility that that instrument is assigned to. We do that because later on you'll learn that we're going to be grabbing de-identified data from that unit, and that data is tied to the zip code where the unit is placed. And with that information, we're able to aggregate that information together and have near real-time prevalence data. Prevalence data not only on SARS, but on influenza and strep, or any assay that's being run on that system, we're able to aggregate that HIPAA-compliant, de-identified data into the cloud. So that is why we ask you for the zip code when you initially turn on the system. After that, you will not be asked for the zip code again. The next thing the analyzer will ask you to do is to run your calibration. Now, calibration is really a feature on this system. What calibration does is it makes sure that our instrument will run the same from the day you turn it on the first time to the day you turn it on the 5,000th time and run a test. There is no expiration date on a Sofia. There is no set number of cassettes that you can run on a Sofia. A Sofia, it can work as long as it wants to, right? And the calibration cassette just confirms that those optics and everything is working properly. So years and years from now, you still know that that system is working as well as it did the first day. So to run a calibration, which is required every 30 days, and the analyzer will tell you when to do it, you just say, okay, calibration is due. You see that in the corner there? You're going to put in your operator ID number or your supervisor code. You're going to select Run Calibration, and then you're simply going to take that little calibration cassette out of the pouch, stick it in the unit, and in about 10 seconds, your calibration will be complete. And you'll see this checkbox, all right? If for some reason your calibration fails, it could be because you took the calibration cassette out of the pouch. And when you look at that cassette, it has these lines going across, and those lines can absorb light. So just make sure that you keep it in the pouch, and if you have an error, put your cassette back in the pouch for about 15 minutes, then try it again. If, again, you have any problem with the calibration, which is very, very rare, you can always call Quidel Technical Support, and they'll help walk you through that calibration issue. Again, calibration is there to make sure that that analyzer is working within the original specifications. So the next thing you would do if you're going to start setting up your system is you would naturally run control. But what we're going to do in this presentation is show you how to run a patient first, because it's very similar to running control, and then we'll come back to running a control. So how do you run a patient? In your cassette, you're going to get all the components that you need. The first thing is you're going to prepare your reagent. So you'll see that you'll have a small glass reagent tube and a little reagent solution bulb. It looks like eyedroppers kind of. What you do is you twist off the top, hydrate that reagent tube, and your extraction reagent is ready for you to begin processing. You then go and take your patient swab, and once you have your patient swab, you set it inside that reagent tube. You leave it sit in there for about a minute. Swirl it 3 times and let it sit for a minute. Oops, we're getting a little kickback in our presentation here. All right, what's happening here? So it's important you leave the swab in the tube for a minute, because what it's doing is it's disrupting that virus so we can get to that nucleocapsid protein and be able to measure it. So that's why that minute is really important. You don't want to take it out before a minute's up. When a minute is over, then you just simply remove the swab. And what this picture shows you is you kind of swirl it against the glass edges just to make sure you get rid of all that liquid. Because, you know, some people may not have a lot of liquid in their nose. They may not have a lot of mucus. So it's important that you get out as much liquid as you can off that swab. The next thing you'll do is you'll take a plastic pipette that comes in your kit as well. And what you do is you squeeze the little bulb on top of that pipette, insert it into the reagent tube, and let go. And the liquid will aspirate up into that pipette. You may see some of the liquid go to that overflow chamber right there. You see the word overflow? That's okay, because this is a specifically measured pipette. It has 120 microliters. So if you aspirate a little bit more, it's going to go in that overflow chamber, and that's completely fine. You then take that pipette and slowly put the liquid into the sample well, as you can see in the picture below. At this point, you're ready to begin processing your test. So you can process the test in either a walk away or read now configuration. All right. In walk away mode, what that means is that as you put the sample into the cassette, the sample is now going to migrate across this nitrocellulose pad. And what's happening is the antigen is coming in, and there are antibodies on this pad that are, you know, they're connected to that antigen, they're specific to that antigen, and they're going to bind together. When they bind together, the instrument is taking a reading because they're labeled with a material that fluoresces inside of the instrument. So this process, this chemical reaction, takes 15 minutes to happen. Now, there's 2 ways that 15 minutes can be accounted for. The first is what we call walk-away mode. It's where you just insert the cassette and walk away from the unit and the unit will time 15 minutes for you. So you can go off and see patients, do paperwork, whatever you need to do, come back in 15, 20, 30 minutes, whenever. Your results will be stored onto your Sofia 2 and will be on the display. And if you put a USB port in the back, they'll be configured to that USB port. So all your data will be there when you come back. But now let's say you're in, let's say, a nursing home, right? And you're doing routine testing. You don't want to run one at a time. That would only be 4 patients an hour, right? You're going to run them in batch mode. So what you do here is you inoculate the cassettes just like you did before, but each cassette will have a timer, and that timer is for 15 minutes. At that point, when the first timer goes off at 15 minutes, you make sure that your instrument is in what we call read now mode. You insert the cassette, and in literally 11 seconds, your results will be ready. You can document those results or pull them off the unit, and then you can move on to the next cassette that's sitting on your counter. So you can virtually run anywhere from 40 to 50 tests an hour, depending upon how smooth and how efficient you get at the process. We normally like to say 30 tests an hour is probably a good number. I know this is our marketing numbers here, but if you had multiple people doing different steps, you could actually do really high throughput on the Sofia. Okay? So that's how you run a patient. Now, running a control is almost as simple as running a patient. You run a control for the following reasons, and these are very standard guidelines for most clear wave assays. They follow the same guidelines here. You want to run external controls for every untrained operator. So that means every time someone in your organization gets trained and they're going to start running on the Sofia, they need to pass their QC. That just shows that they know how to operate the system and they're doing it appropriately. You need to document that for each untrained operator. The other time you're going to run controls is for any new shipment. So you get new shipment in, you want to make sure that shipment didn't get damaged, or in shipping, it wasn't sitting on some dock somewhere in the hot sun or the freezing cold. So you want to run a control on each new shipment. You also want to run it on a new lot number. So let's say you get a new shipment, it has multiple lot numbers, which usually doesn't happen, but I guess it could if you ordered a whole bunch of tests. You would want to make sure that each new lot number also has a control run on it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in each of your kits, you'll get a positive and a negative control. But if you need more, specifically when you first start up, let's say you're training lots of operators, or you've got different lot numbers in, just call Quidel technical support or customer support, and we will send you those QC controls at no charge. Okay, so just call us and we'll make sure that you've got those. All right, so you keep jumping out here on this system. I'll go back in. It's not feeling us today. There we go. All right, let's go again. Well, we'll just go this way. If it doesn't want to work with us in slide mode, we'll just go this way. All right, so running a control is simply just like running a patient, except you're going to have a couple different steps. You're going to first of all prepare your positive and negative controls, just like you did your patient. You're going to get that reagent ready, put your control swab in the reagent tube, and then inoculate the cassette. You'll do it for both the positive and negative control. You'll set your timer for 15 minutes for those cassettes, the positive and the negative control. And when they're ready, you're going to press the Run QC button on your Sofia 2. At that point, the instrument's going to say, can you scan in your QC card? And it's going to show you a picture, so it'll remind you to do that. This QC card is on top of each kit. So when you open up your kit, it's a cardboard box. One of the flaps of the box is the QC card. So you can tear it off. It's perforated right there. You can tear it off and then just scan it into your device, and that'll set you up. And it's aligning that lot number with the cassette that you're running, because each of these cassettes have a unique ID that's tied to the lot number. The next step is you pick Read Now, because now remember, we've let these two cassettes sit on our table for 15 minutes. So we're ready to read them. You'll insert your positive control, you'll take a reading, and then you'll insert the negative control. So again, you place the cassette into the device, it will read for 11 seconds, it'll give you the check mark saying that positive passed, then you'll insert your negative cassette, it'll process, and then you'll get a check mark that it passed as well. So now that you've understand how to set up and calibrate your instrument, how to run controls, and how to run patients, we want to go back through how to run in batch mode again for you, just because this is so critical and important, because many of you will be running multiple patients at one time. So I'm going to hand it over to Allison Leone.
All right. Well, thanks, Cheryl, so much. So what we're going to go ahead and focus on today in the next few slides is the read now mode, which we also call the batch mode. And this is where you can process the multiple samples at a time that Cheryl alluded to earlier. So let's go ahead and dig in a little deeper. This document that you're looking at, or steps that you're looking at, is part of a document that will be released in the near term. And Cheryl said, earlier that you can reach out to us if you have any questions about it, as we will be able to get that to customers in the next few weeks. So one thing to note is the directions are still under review and they're not approved, but we did want to share this with you at this point. This information for batch testing is very detailed to help remove any ambiguity in the process. So let's start at the beginning. We want to always be sure that we wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. So make sure you wear what you have to based on your facility's recommendations. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll take the storage tube, the dry storage tube, and we'll go ahead and label it with the patient's name. At that point, you want to direct the patient to go ahead and blow their nose as this clears out the excess mucus so that you can get a good sample. Then you'll open the swab and you'll collect the sample. You'll place the swab in the storage tube that has been labeled with the patient's information. Now we're ready to start the testing process. What you'll do is you'll label the reagent tube that has that lyophilized pellet in it with the patient's name. Then you'll open that reagent dropper and you'll reconstitute the reagent, and you'll place the swab in the reagent tube and let it sit for 1 minute. As Cheryl said, it is very important that the sample sits in the reagent tube for 1 minute, as this is how we pull the nucleocapsid protein out so that it can be detected within the system with that antigen-antibody combination. Once the 1 minute is up, we want to express as much sample from the swab as possible. And then next what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pipette the sample using a fixed volume pipette. Next slide, please. And this pipette is included in the test kit. Then we'll go ahead and dispense that sample into the cassette. And once the sample has been dispensed on the cassette, we'll allow that cassette to sit for 15 minutes. And you want to always remember to set that timer when you once you've dispensed the sample into the cassette. So then after the cassette is incubating that 15 minutes, you can go ahead and start the next step or next sample following the same process we just went over. Now, after that 15-minute timer goes off, we're now ready to process the sample on the Sofia 2. So let's review the steps to process the cassette in the read now mode. So first what we'll do is we'll enter the user ID and patient ID if required, and we'll press that play button. At this point, we want to make sure that the Sofia 2 is set to the read now mode. And if Verena is enabled, you'll be required to enter the patient's age, and then at that point, we'll press the arrow to continue. We'll open the cassette drawer and insert the cassette and close the cassette drawer. And the test will process in less than a minute. And once the test is completed, you'll go ahead and remove and discard the cassette. And you'll repeat this process until you've completed the entire batch of samples that you have processed. And that's the entire process for batch testing. So that is very detailed. It really walks you through the process, and it makes it very simple. It simplifies the whole process. So now that we've reviewed that, let's move on and talk about recommended maintenance and warranty that accompanies the Sofia 2. So maintaining the Sofia 2 is super simple. You essentially clean the external surfaces of the Sofia, and then you can take out the cassette drawer and go ahead and clean that with a soft cloth or wipe and 70% alcohol. You want to make sure before you do any maintenance to the Sofia, you want to make sure that you go ahead and you turn off and unplug the instrument, just, for safety precautions. One thing to note is please do not clean the Sofia with soap or other cleaning solutions. There is in the user manual a list of approved disinfectants, that are available to use with the Sofia. Now, if warranty service is required, the Sofia analyzer should be sent to Quidel. Please do not attempt to repair the system, only perform the cleaning procedures, or you can replace the battery on the Sofia as well. So moving along, let's discuss connectivity and reporting. So the Sofia 2 can send two different data sets. The first set of data we're going to talk about is what Cheryl talked about before, the de-identified data that's sent through the Verena system. And this is included within your system. And these de-identified results are automatically transmitted to a cloud. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to compile, analyze, and generate reports across your entire healthcare system. And then with Verena, not only will you be able to look at everything going on within your system, you will be part of a community of Sofias that share aggregated data. And what this allows you to do is you have visibility into local community disease prevalence near real time, as well as looking at it from a national perspective. I'm not going to spend any more time on Verena today, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out. So in addition to Verena, Sofia 2 can send identified data through a middleware that will connect to your EMR system. On the next slide, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about connectivity and reporting. And so reporting is when you have to report to your state departments of health, and that it's really dependent on your state reporting requirements, right? So whatever you need to do in your state is what you need to provide. And so there are 4 ways you can collect results from the Sofia. One is manually, and this is where you would look at the result on the Sofia screen, and you'll go ahead and you'll transcribe that information and then provide that information via the vehicles you have today, whether it's a line list or a database that you access and provide that information. Another way is to automatically download results to a USB, which is, you can perform that by updating a setting on your Sofia, and then you can access that data from your computer, and you can pull the information that way. Then there's an option to print out results, and this is used a Dymo printer. And those are available to purchase through Amazon, or you can purchase it through Quidel. And then finally, as we touched on before, connecting your system to the EMR for automating that transmission to the patient's chart. The one thing I want to note is that Verena does not have identified information, as we talked about. So Verena is not used to report your COVID results to the state. That is something you need to do in addition. Verena automatically sends that data, and so you don't need to worry about transmitting it. So while we focused in this presentation on the SARS, and the flu A/B SARS assay, just wanted to note that Sofia does have a robust menu that includes influenza A/B on its own, RSV, strep A, Lyme, and then as we talked about today, most recently, the SARS, the flu A/B, and the SARS combo test. And we aren't stopping there. We are looking at gastrointestinal testing, such as parasites, and we are looking at additional respiratory panels. And so what's important is that Quidel is committed to meeting the diagnostic needs of the market, not only today, but in the future. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time today, and thank you foremost for your commitment to caring for the community as we really navigate this unprecedented time and the pandemic. So thank you so much. And then I'm going to turn it over so that we can open it up for some Q&A if there are any questions.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl and Allison, for sharing this important information with us. I feel like things are changing so rapidly on a regular basis, so thank you for this most up-to-date information that you shared with us today. We are opening up the question and answer portion, so please submit your questions using the question pane on the right hand of your screen, and we'll just give that a couple minutes here to see if we have any questions that come in for the ladies. Okay. Do personal care homes need to have CLI training certification to use the Quidel Sofia?
When you say CLI, do you mean CLIA certification, if you can clarify?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Yes, absolutely. In order to run the Sofia, the SARS and flu A/B SARS assay, as well as the other assays on the Sofia, are considered prescription, and they require a doctor's order. And so you do need to get your CLIA waiver certificate through the state. And, if you need help with that, or if you have questions, I have a quick guide that I can provide to you if you want to reach out. And so you do actually require that certification.
Okay, so the second part of that question is, how do personal care homes go about obtaining this certification?
Yes, and that I can go ahead. There's a CMS form 116. I have examples of how to fill those out. I have fee structures and all of that. So I'm happy to send all that out to you. You have my email right there on the screen, and I'm happy to get that to you and walk through it with you if you'd like.
Excellent. The next question is, does the user need to clean the device between reading samples?
No, that is not required. You clean it as needed. Some people put a form together where they say calibration check, QC check, and then clean instrument check. And some people do it on a monthly basis. It's really up to your organization's SOPs or standard operating procedures.
Excellent. Again, if you have any questions, we still have a couple minutes here remaining in our time. So if you have questions, please type them into your questions pane and we will get those answered for you. We'll just give it another minute. I'll just give you some reminders here as we're waiting for questions to come in. Don't forget to stay on the line to complete the survey after we close it out. That feedback is very helpful for us. And today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the PHCA website. So be on the lookout for more scheduled PHCA webinars. We're having those internal conversations now for December and into the new year. In the meantime, we have a lot of great on-demand sessions and live sessions planned, as well as regional roundtables for the unconventional 2020 PHCA convention, which will run from November 10th to the 24th. You can get over 40 credits during this time frame. So it's a great opportunity. There's a lot of great sessions. If you haven't already checked it out, check out the PHCA website, because there are a lot of sessions, and we are adding new ones all the time. So be on the lookout for that, and check out there's several COVID-related sessions that we're hosting, but in addition, other workforce topics and other quality and operations, legal and regulatory sessions as well. And I'm not seeing any more questions come in, so I just want to thank Cheryl and Allison again for today's presentation, and just ask everybody to have a great remainder to your day and stay well.
Thank you.